Really pleased now to move on to our second fireside chat of the day, titled Move Fast Without Breaking Things, with Gleb Bahmutov and Nicole Ruszkowski. So Gleb is a JavaScript ninja, image processing expert, and software quality fanatic. During the day, Gleb is making the web a better place as a distinguished engineer at Cyprus. At night, he is fighting software bugs and blogs about it at his website, which hopefully will get shared online. Nicole is an agile delivery professional who is passionate about building and scaling high-performing teams. With over 10 years of experience in e-commerce, Nicole was a key member of the team that brought the world Amazon Prime Video and its predecessor, Love Film by Post. She is leveraging this experience in the fintech industry in her role as a senior delivery manager at checkout.com. Over to you guys for a great fireside chat.
Welcome everyone to our next fireside chat. I hope you are enjoying today's session so far. For the next 20 minutes, we will be focusing on anything and everything about testing, software quality, and especially about testing of web applications. Please feel free to ask us any questions using the Ask the Question button somewhere down there. And there will be a Q&A section at the end as well. So please feel any questions you had, I will try to make sure I will ask here or over in Slack. I'm Nicole, and I will be moderating today's session. And as previously said, I'm currently a senior delivery manager at Checkout. With me today, we have Gleb Bahmutov, engineer at Cyprus.io. Gleb has many years of hands-on experience in engineering, and as previously said, is extremely passionate about testing. So therefore, please could you introduce yourself and also start explaining to us why would we even care about testing and spending money on something like, testing.
Hello, Nicole, and hello, everyone. Thank you for inviting me. I spent last 4 years building an open source test runner for anything that runs on the web, any website, any web application. But I always was passionate about quality. The software has to work. And people look at that and ask the question, like, why should we even care? And I think anyone who was alive for the last 12 months knows that if your business doesn't have a website that's working, you don't have a business. COVID was horrible. But one thing it taught us is that a web application has to work in order for your people to actually reach you, right? If you have a web store that sells something like even groceries, it has to work. If you have to order delivery, it has to work. Even now with, COVID vaccine rollout, you have to register online, right? Because the demand is too high for phone calls or physical visit. So it has to work. And we know that many websites actually crashed and did not work. So if you're postponing quality, if you're postponing testing, you might get into a situation where there's an emergency and your competitors are functioning and your site is down. And then what? How much can you bring in revenue if nobody can buy your product? So we know that testing is important and the quality is important. And testing is a mechanism by which you get to quality web software. So I hope that you understand that it's not money wasted. It's the money that ensures that you have a business.
Thank you. I definitely agree with that one. So when you just mentioned there that we are in an environment where we have to be really fast, we need websites tomorrow actually yesterday rather than tomorrow.
Right.
So in that case, at what point do you think we should start testing? At what point should we think about that and write test cases?
It's a great question. So imagine you're a company that's just starting, right? Maybe you're starting from scratch or you're starting a new product. So you should start writing tests by the end of the day. And you know why? Because during the day, you probably are just prototyping. You're not sure what it's going to be. So it's too early. But by the end of the day, you want to write a test so that when you come back next day, you can continue without breaking stuff. Because the test is like a checkpoint. It allows you to know that if you're refactoring code later, if you're adding something else, you're not breaking what you already written on the first day. So by the end of the first day, please write a test. And the test can be crude, can be very basic. Its purpose is just to kind of, hey, this is what my application is supposed to do. And then you can add more tests. There is a big shift right now in when you're running tests and who's writing them. So it used to be that one team of people were writing the software, were prototyping, were writing requirements. And once we're done, at the end of a sprint, they would kind of throw the software over the wall. And when completely separate team of people, probably in a different time zone or a different country even, would write tests. So they will take the same specifications and say, oh, I guess I'll click on a button and I'll verify. So they would either write the test or run the test manually, right? And then the first team would get results maybe a day later or a week later or a month later saying, hey, whatever you gave us in, let's say, in January, here are all the passing tests and here are all the broken tests. And then you'll have to figure out, well, I guess I'll have to, recreate the bug that you describe and, fix it, and then you'll test again. So there's a huge time gap between the time you write software and when someone writes the tests. And when you get the result, the feedback from the test. So now there is a big shift. We see that the people writing the software are now writing the tests, right? The developers that are coding the website immediately write the test because it's right there. Like they're working on a feature and they're writing a test that verifies the feature works, right? So not a separate team, not separate time zone, not separate week to get the feedback, but immediate feedback, right? And you can say, well, what if it takes too long to run all the tests? Okay, the CI can parallelize and run the test still quickly, but you want that feedback as soon as possible. So in our opinion, there is a big shift in who's writing the test. When they're writing, it's what they call shift left, right? The closer you are to developers who are writing the software,
Yeah, sure. I think we lost your audio there, Gleb. In that case, I totally agree with you there. That we are in an agile environment where test writing has become the day-to-day task and not an afterthought. I hear a lot of I'm the developer, I'm writing the code. I maybe shouldn't be testing my own code. We need someone else to look at it. Once you have your audio back, maybe you can give us a little bit of a insight on what do you think about those comments. And also, I'm seeing the audience is bringing questions in. Please continue. I hope I will be able to pick them back up. Gleb, can you hear us again?
Sorry if I lost you. It just froze for a second. I had to reload. I apologize.
Yeah.
I hope I did not say something, foolish while I was gone.
I hope you can. Did you hear what I said? Otherwise, I would love to understand. You mentioned there that we should write our tests as we go along, as we build, as we develop. And I do hear a lot from developers, engineers I work with that I have coded my build. I'm the developer here. I shouldn't be testing my own code, right? It should be someone else. And you mentioned the throwing over the wall. What do you think about that?
Well, developers are already writing tests, right? They're writing unit tests probably. And the tests help.
I am not sure, but I think we lost audio again. Can you please check, Gleb?
How about now? I'm not sure why.
Yes, you are back. You are back. I can hear you.
Right. I'm not sure why I'm losing audio. Everything still is connected. But basically, developers are writing unit tests anyway. You just want developers maybe to test end-to-end, the full system, right? How it works in different parts, how the front end works with the back end. And it's not, I don't
Gleb, I'm sorry to interrupt, but again, we have lost you there again. Please to the audience, please continue to ask questions. I will hopefully get him back and I will ask those questions as soon as possible. Otherwise, also feel free to visit us in the Slack afterwards.
Nicole, can you hear
Yes,
me?
I can hear you. You're back.
Hear me now?
Can you hear me?
1, 2, 3.
We can hear you fine.
I apologize. I cannot hear anything. 1, 2, 3.
I can hear you.
Yes, I'm not sure what's going on.
It seems like we have a technical issue, so we are going to a holding page right now. Please bear with us. And we are back. Thank you, everyone, for your patience. Apologies. But as you can see, we are live, so things happen like this. Gleb, I think we were talking about before about who should be writing those tests, who should be testing. Should it be the people who actually write the code?
I strongly believe that developers should write their own tests. They're right there, they're working on a feature. The test just verifies that what they implemented and probably tested manually works exactly as before and that not accidentally is broken. It's fine to have a second pair of eyes who writes more tests, right? But developers should be the primary writers.
Yeah. I think that also answers at least one of our audience questions. I think I'm going to move on to those because we do running a little bit short. So let's see if we can answer some of those questions. One good question here is around how do you find time to write tests? That's from June, and maintain those when features and requirements constantly changing, right? Like the effort to do that, I guess, is quite high.
I'll ask you, how do you find time to write the code, right?
Yeah.
How do you find time to manually verify that what you already have delivered is still working? There is no getting around trying your application and going through a series of user stories to make sure nothing is broken by the new deploy of database or new configuration. There is no getting around it. You're just switching from maybe manually or semi-manually testing it to full automation. That's your goal, to full automation, because that doesn't get tired, runs very, very quickly, and you have to write these things usually once. The maintenance is a cost, I agree. That's why the tests have to be very readable. You should capture a video of your test run so you see what's going on, so you understand the purpose of a test. And also what helps in making sure the tests are maintainable is every test update should go through the normal pull request review. So you look at the test with someone else saying, does this test make sense? Maybe we're testing that feature in this particular test. Maybe this feature will be obsolete, so we should remove those tests. Or maybe this test can be rewritten so that future maintenance is easier.
Mm-hmm. Slightly related to that, because as you mentioned, it's definitely your shared responsibilities with engineers, with QA, and even other functions who bring a huge value to getting eyes on what is happening and if the feature actually presents the value we're after, right? So, for example, Sachin is asking, could the engineers even be fully trusted to functional test?
I don't see why not. You trust the engineer to implement it. So writing the test, I think, is part of it. The good, interesting thing that I see lately is that you write the test in the same language as you write your implementation in. For example, for the web, you have to use JavaScript or TypeScript. There are no other languages. Everything else transpiles ultimately to JavaScript. So it makes sense to use the same language the developers already know and work with every day to write the end-to-end test. Now, if someone's writing a Python web server, it makes sense to use a framework or a tool where you code in Python those tests, so you can leverage your knowledge of the language. So to me, the developers can be trusted. The automation engineers and QA engineers can write other types of tests with specialized knowledge like security, accessibility, but functional tests are up to developers.
Mm-hmm. Do you see actually that kind of balance between writing those tests, maintaining them, also thinking about other tests like you just mentioned, like around security, which probably is even sometimes an afterthought. I would make that assumption here. Do you see that as the biggest obstacles these days to be able to ensure that the website I'm launching isn't going down straight away?
I think it's part of it. Because the functional testing takes so much time, takes so much effort, if you do it manually. But by the time you get to accessibility or security testing, you don't have time, right? There is a deadline.
Mm-hmm.
So what is usually dropped off? Well, it's either testing or security or performance testing, right? Because you don't get to that part because, let's admit it, the deadline is tight, so the feature is more important. So there is definitely a trade-off. And there is a positive to this. If you invest in better testing tools, then you can automate what takes time every week, every sprint, every month. And the more you automate, the more time you save. So the investment of a couple days of setting up a good test automation now can pay off every week, every sprint. It multiplies, right? Mm-hmm. And it multiplies in another way. If your developers learn how to write tests and don't look at this as a chore, but instead as a productivity gain for them, they will start writing more tests. Like that's a fact. Because they'll see, I have more features, so I'll test that, so I never have to come back to make sure they work, right? And you will see that you will actually grow your testing, suite, which is something that I think is plus. And then you'll have time to invest in other types of testing. A big one, to me, which is like a tip, see if you can add visual testing. The one that takes a screenshot of your whole website or elements and compares to previously saved good screenshots. That will give you so much coverage to make sure nothing is out of place, no styles are broken, everything comes through as it used to in a single, assertion. But you will thank me later.
Yeah. So in that case, as I can hear it from you, like the more we have, the better, right? Like we need to test everything and we should write tests and all the time. And that kind of makes the assumption of, more testing, better website and all that. But when is testing actually enough? Like when testing is, when do you know, how do you make the judgment that you have written enough testing, the testing is sufficient?
Right. So there are two ways. One, you can review all your tests, right, to make sure they match to your user stories and your specifications, saying, we have all these features, and these are all corresponding tests, 1-to-1. And if we add a feature, we add another test. That's where pull request reviews are so helpful, to make sure you don't miss testing. But that's manual, and it's a little bit hard, because you have to be really, really, I would say, precise about this. Another way is to measure code coverage. All those features that you implemented is implemented in code. So if you instrument the code and you run tests and check which source lines were actually executed, you'll find gaps. And you'll say, wait a minute, this source line, what does it do? Oh, it deletes my user account. Wait, we didn't write a test to delete a user account. Let's write a test to hit that line. So by measuring indirectly the code coverage, we're measuring indirectly all the features that we've tested. But then after you get high, code coverage number, then you have to think like a tester. Am I testing with different types of data? Am I testing valid, invalid emails? All the things that code coverage doesn't cover or doesn't capture. Mm-hmm. And after you do that, then you'll say, I have high confidence that I'm testing enough. But it's up to you to decide when that enough is really reached.
Yeah, that's true. And we all know that that is a big challenge, right? Like even the confidence of launching something new, something you might not be able to even fully understand until actually customers using it and telling us what's wrong with it, that the nerves are big. All right. So I think we're running out of time here. So therefore, thank you very much. Please join us in the Slack to answer any more of your questions, and or on any other social media. You can find me or Gleb there.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.